Hey, Kelly, you want to test your audio for me? Kelly, is it letting you unmute yourself or do I need to do it? Text. Excellent. Hey, Jim, you want to test your audio for me?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear. Kelly?
Hi, Brandon.
Hello.
Great.
Hey y'all. Hey Kelly, what's up?
Hey, Brandon.
What's up, Chrissy?
Oh, it's going. How are you? Jim, I think I'm going to ask you to monitor the chat function this time.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, Julia, you want to test your audio? Okay, go for it.
Thank you. How's everyone doing?
Great.
Good. I'm going to change my background to something more appropriate.
I'm here. I'm sorry. I was having trouble unmuting.
No worries. Yeah, I just made you a co-host. So as folks come in, if you are a panelist today, I am adding you manually into the system.
And it's 207.
All right, Seth, you want to go ahead and test your audio for me, see if you can unmute?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Seth.
Yep.
Spencer, would you mind going ahead and saying hello and testing your audio for us?
Sure. Hello. Test,
Thank
test.
you. Great. Thank you so much. And Lacey, just a moment. Okay, give it a shot, Lacey.
Okay, hi, test, test.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Then Mike, you want to test unmuting and test your audio? Mm-mm. Okay, you're unmuted, Mike. Give it a shot now.
How about now? Is this any
Yep.
better? Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then Janet, you want to go ahead and test your audio for me?
Morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much. All right, I think we're just going to give it a few more minutes here, maybe 3 more minutes. Allow a few more folks to hop on. And then Julia, will go ahead and have you kick this off, okay? Thank you. Amber, would you go ahead and test your mic for me, your audio? You might have to unmute yourself.
Did it work?
Yep, there we go.
All right, we have passed the 180 participant mark. Team, do we want to get started?
I think so.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, to our first all GAD call on the Zoom platform. I have definitely been scrolling through each of the screens just to see all of your smiley profile photos, or even just your names on the screen. It's fun to be able to see everybody here. Easier to see than the WebEx format. So hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. What's up, laser cats? I wanted to start today. First, I'll recognize the usual team that's here. Your Vice Chair, Kelly Starrett, the NAR core team of Christy Garavaglia, Jim McGregor, and Jerry Allen, and all of the other NAR team that is joining us as well. We have some special guests today and some GADs that are going to be giving us some presentations, but we'll introduce them a little bit later as we go through the program. First, a couple of administrative items. Everyone get out your calendars or your pens if you're still doing actual writing on a notepad, and mark down, if you have not already, the information for the GAD sessions that will be held for our virtual mid-year meetings. First, next Thursday, we have our GAD professional development session that is going to be held in the afternoon. This is Central Time from 3 to 5 p.m. That session will be, as we've been calling it internally, the creepy data stuff with Drew Brighton and the Target Smart team. But more officially, they are going to be talking about all of the really fascinating ways that we are using data, your personal data, and those of the voters that you're trying to reach in campaigns to really do some expert level target campaign materials. Then the following week, we are going to have our GAD breakout sessions, which for those of you who are new, we split out in state GADs and local GADs. Kelly will host the local GADs and I will host the state GADs in an issues discussion, just sort of a round table to talk about all of the things we have going on. So that will be Monday, May 4th, again, Central Time. That is from 12 noon to 2. Bring your own lunch. And then finally, we'll have the All GAD call with the All GAD meeting, which will be Friday, May 8th from 3 to 5 p.m., also Central Time, which is perfect. It will feed right into our collective GAD happy hour, which we'll work on getting on the schedule. So make sure you've got those down. As a result, of course, we will not be having this regular All GAD call on Thursday afternoon for the next 2 weeks. So stand by for the schedule following the conclusion of the mid-year legislative meetings. But for now, we have mid-year content for the next 2 weeks, so we'll be seeing you in those meeting rooms. All right, so to our program today. We are joined by two special guests from the Association Executives Committee, and we have Janet Kane, who's the Vice Chair of the AEC from the Metro Tex Association in Dallas. Hi, Janet. And we have Mike Valerino from the Cleveland, Akron, Ohio Association, who was the chair of the AEC, the chair of the AEC work group on core standards. And we have had some questions from the GAD community about the changes that were made to the core standards program for this year as a result of the coronavirus. And we just wanted to invite our AEs here to tell you a little bit about how those decisions were made and explain to you what's going to come forward from here forward. So Janet and Mike, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And if you would, whoever wants to take the first question, please do. But could you tell us a little bit about the core standards process, how those standards are evaluated on a regular basis, and what is the process for approving any changes to core standards?
Sure. Well, I'll start off and then I'll let Mike chime in. So number one, just to let everybody know, the core standards work group did not just happen to get together this year because of what was going on for COVID-19. The AEC committee at the beginning of the leadership year, so the chair, John Seabury, who sends his regrets for not being able to be on the meeting today, He and I get together and we get together with our NAR staff and say, okay, what work groups does the AEC need this year? What are we hearing? What do we need to develop? So from that, before the year even starts, core standards work group was one that we decided and agreed with NAR staff that needed to be developed. So every 3 years, the plan is to just look at the core standards, see if there's anything that we need to add, see if there's other recommendations that are coming in to revamp that program or to add things that haven't been addressed that need to be addressed. So this core group was already in place, and Mike was appointed the chair for the core standards work group, primarily because, number one, he volunteered, and number two, he had been on the original core standards work group that put in place core standards. So he knows it very, very well. The work group, by happenstance, their very first meeting happened to be after we got hit with COVID-19. And so what we were hearing, and NAR staff was hearing, and John and I were hearing, were from state associations that said, you know what, our local associations are really hurting. What relief can you possibly give them in response to COVID-19? And what could they do for core standards? Some of the requests were literally to suspend all of the core standards. So that participated then with the very first committee meeting for Mike and his chair committee was to look at these requests and take that on. So that's how work groups come forward from the AC. Now, I will say that when we do work groups, everyone for the AEs, and all of you are considered AEs, are invited to serve on any of the work groups. So for 2020, every individual that requested to serve on a work group was appointed to serve on a work group. And we don't, say, oh, well, you're an AE, so you get to be on it, or you're not, you're a GAD, so you don't get to. It's open to everyone, and we don't really look at who's doing what. We look at their interest and their participation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike to say more about his work group.
Thanks, Janet. Yeah, and thanks for that mention too of a little bit of my background, being with the Akron-Cleveland Association of Realtors. And I'm the person, I understand a lot of the GADs on the call are the person at your association who fills out the form, and you're all most of you are very familiar with core standards. I'm the person that does that at my association. And I think too, after our work group had our approval, what happens then is it goes to the larger AEC, and then it goes to the leadership team, which is the NAR leadership team. That is the route that the recommendation took once it was approved. But back to the beginning, the first meeting that we had, and there was an incredible amount of debate. Like Janet said, we started with basically a request to suspend core standards for the year. And so the recommendation that we ended up with, we believe was a middle ground. We had, I think, looked at, instead of the core standards in their entirety, we chose to look at each of the standards through the lens of what is affected by social distancing. Because when you're asking to suspend core standards completely, well, what kind of effect does COVID have on our ability to put a link on our website to the Code of Ethics or to conduct an annual audit? So we wanted to look at those things, and we felt that most of the standards could still go through. I think that one of the things that we've heard back from the GADs, and I think that some of the things that you're concerned about are that this was somehow a valuing system, and that therefore the standards that were waived for the year are the ones that were valued the least. And I can tell you that is not true. On the discussion that we had, the Vote, Act, and Invest and consumer outreach pieces of the core standards right now are probably the most important standards that we have, and the work that you guys are all doing. I mean, you've all made incredible achievements since this all began, and so it is incredibly important work. Our lens was, if there is an association out there that is really struggling and isn't able to accomplish these things due to COVID-19, do they deserve to have their charter revoked this year? Because that's the ultimate function of core standards, is to lay kind of the minimum standard for what an association has to do to maintain their charter. So I think I've rambled enough here about what we went through on our first meeting. So be happy to take any other questions.
So follow-up question for you guys. We understand that the advocacy portion is suspended. What other items were suspended, and are there any plans for further revisions this year?
Well, the work group still has its charge to evaluate the core standards and make recommendations for the 2021 cycle. And those recommendations will probably come forward in November. I'm not sure where we'll be at that time, but that's the time frame, and it's going to start with a survey probably that's going to be done with AEs, and we're going to talk to the state associations that have to evaluate the core standards of their locals and all those sorts of things. So there may be more recommendations that come forward. I believe that they'll have to do with the 2021 cycle. In terms of 2020, no, it's the Vote, Act, and Invest and the consumer outreach that were impacted. And the other part of the recommendation that I think has been lost a little bit is that the group recommended that resources be provided and promoted to local associations that remain focused on these standards, on Realtor Party's Vote, Act, and Invest goals and consumer outreach, to emphasize the importance of these association functions, and to provide some examples of how in these times there might be even more things that we could do that could check those boxes.
Thank you, Mike. And just a note to everybody who's on the call, if you haven't seen Jim's message in the chat, we can take questions there. Just if you have any questions, please submit them to everyone, and we'll get them up for you to our guests. For either Janet or Mike, I think I heard you both say that the removal of advocacy from the core standards requirement for this year was not intended to be a value statement on those activities. And I know both of you come from strong government affairs associations, and so you understand how that work really matters to our members. So to associations that are, and their leadership that are maybe less involved with NAR, can you tell us whether you've heard any feedback about whether this sends a message that advocacy is something that can be set aside right now? And if not, fantastic. But are you hearing any other comments like that?
So just a reminder, the core standards is really an internal document. It's an internal document. It's a requirement that associations are bound to meet by NAR, and those documents are actually reviewed and approved by the state associations. So if at the end of the year you have not complied as a local association, your state basically gives, a determination that no, you haven't met them, or yes, you have. So the number of people, as far as the associations and your members in general, they probably aren't even aware of the core standards. It's because it's an internal document that you say, yes, we've completed. Two people that I know that know what it is when you have to have your president and your president-elect sign off certifying that they are also aware that you have met the criteria. So with that, I have not heard a lot of feedback yet, except from this group, which I really, really appreciate, because again, you know, it's kind of unintended consequences, but I'm glad to know that you were able to come forward and number one, express your concerns and express that, you know, there was some devaluing feeling, because that was certainly not the case at all. And again, it was simply that we are encouraging everyone to meet those requirements. But as Mike said, if by chance an association, because of COVID, they just go, you know, man, I was able to do 3 consumer outreach programs, but I didn't get the 4th one done because we were down for, you know, 4 months or months. It simply means that they would not lose their charter because of that. But it is with full intention, and I know that the leadership team at NAR, they are strong advocates, as well as all of us. And so that leadership team, when they said, you know what, we're in unprecedented times, so for right now, we're gonna loosen up these requirements, that's all it is. It's for this time right now.
I would add too that we're still waiting to hear back from NAR staff on exactly what it's going to look like in the form, the core standards form that we all fill out. But our understanding is that the standards that are being waived for the current year will still be in the form. They can still be checked. You can still upload your documentation for those items. There's just going to be, I think, a footnote or a mention below the title that's going to say that these are, for the 2020 cycle, that these are not mandatory.
Thank you. And then another follow-up question from me. So we have talked about how you guys, you know, both have fantastic GADs that you work with, and that there are some associations that are really fortunate to have that understanding of the importance of advocacy. You know, my AE is fantastic and understands the work that I do. However, there are other things that go on at an association. So we're bogged down with some other issues right now. What do you say to GADs who might be concerned with an AE saying, you know what, you don't have to do this stuff this year. I need you to refocus on these other efforts that we're doing at the association instead. How can we continue to promote the importance of advocacy and the work that we are doubling down to do these days? I mean, we're working our tails off on advocacy stuff that could easily fit into all kinds of boxes that we no longer need to check. So how can we ensure that that work is still valued when the boxes may have a footnote that says you don't have to check these?
Well, I will tell you that our GAD is probably busier now than he has ever been. And I think that one of the things you can do individually, because I know the work, you guys are on more calls with your city councils and the mayors and, you know, every government affairs with the state and the locals and everything going on. And you are spending, you know, hours late at night on these city council meetings that last forever. So provide your members with reports on here's what we're doing. Provide your board of directors with here's the essential things that are going on, and here's what I did that. And you're, you know, lucky that basically that I was there to help you with these items. I know that our government affairs director, I just literally switched off of our board meeting, and we had him providing the update on what's going on with the cities, what's going on with the mayors. How does this, you know, contrast with what the governor is saying? So you play such a vital role. And I know you guys without question are busier now than you have ever had to be. And so I think just touting what you're doing and showing how busy that you are and how your work is going to continue. And you can say, you know what, we may be on a reset right now, but as soon as things open and as soon as 2021 starts, we need to be ready. And so what I'm doing as your government affairs director is not only am I putting out these fires right now, but I'm also working with our legislators on what's going to happen through elections, what's going to happen in scenarios for next year. So you play such a key role. I can't imagine really an AE who's not recognize that.
No, and I would add that it's your strategic plan that really lays out what your association's priorities are. So I think that NAR's core standards more or less is just the minimum of what needs to be included in that plan. And unless your association is going to take a step back and change their strategic plan, which you should still have a chance to have influence on. And I can't imagine those associations that have strong government affairs departments are going to be pulling back. I know we're full steam ahead. Our GAD is busier than ever, as I imagine you all are.
Janet and Mike and all of the NAR team, is there any plan on a national level to promote the government affairs and advocacy work that is continuing throughout this year? And if there is not, and we understand things are definitely still in flux right now, let me be the first to offer up the entire GAD community to help you plan some kind of promotional campaign that way. But if you have something in mind already, we'd love to hear about it.
Well, I will say that, plans are sometimes made because out of need. But I think that from your group here, and I know today you're going to be sharing some of your ideas on things that you're already doing remotely. Those are the ideas that I think if you can bring those forward and bring those innovative ideas to our attention, and you can send those to Andrew Schoolis, I know he's on NAR staff. Those are the things that can help us then to help fall in line with the further recommendation that Mike had mentioned that kind of goes under the radar of no, the recommendation was not just suspend these things, but also to recommend what other resources can be provided to the locals to strengthen the support of the Realtor Party activities and to continue to help associations achieve those. So your ideas, they can be sent in, and Julia, as far as an overall plan, I know that that's going to be one of the ideas in discussions now for the core standards as well as AEC leadership is we will be looking at ways to recognize it. The one thing that we will have to work on is probably with our state AEs, if state associations, because again, they're the ones that review all of the core standard applications. So they would be the ones to be able to say, yes, this particular association is, on fire. So again, anytime you guys have some ideas, we are really excited to hear those and be able to put those into the plan.
All right, thank you both. Does anyone from the community have any further questions for our AE guests before we continue on? We hope that answered a few questions for you. If you do have questions that you think of later on and you want to send them to Kelly and me and the NAR team, please, of course, do so. Janet and Mike, thank you again for being willing to join us today and talk about these things that aren't entirely comfortable, but we appreciate so much that you're willing to do so. And as always, hope it just demonstrates how passionate your GADs are on behalf of the Realtor Party.
Thanks for having us.
And please, I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
I said thanks for having us and thanks for everything that you do.
Thank you. And please do, if you have the time, if you want to stick around and hear some of the success stories that our GADs from around the country have had that they're going to talk about for the rest of our program, you're welcome to do so.
Thank you, everyone. And as Mike said, just thank you so much for what you do. And again, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. We're happy to talk. Thanks.
I'm going to turn it over to Kelly.
All right, so now we're going to get into some fun programming. We're going to hear from you guys. We want to know what's been going on, what you're working on, what you've knocked out of the park with great success. So we're going to cue it up first with great GAD from Houston, Amber, Bert, and Alfred. What's up? What have you been working on?
Hey, Kelly, thanks. So, of course, we're a mega board in Houston. So we had planned most of our grant projects out at the end of last year for 2020. And we actually had 2 of our major events planned for April, of course. About 2 weeks prior to that event, before the county started shutting everything down here in Harris County in Houston, I went ahead and decided to talk to our CEO. We went ahead and postponed our events, but our members were so excited about it, they kept on seeing what we could do. So 2 things that we've done, we had a housing affordability summit planned We expected about 200 attendees. That was going to be April 9th because it's Fair Housing Month. So HAR has moved our open houses, showings, classes virtually. So we're going to stay in that same vein with our housing summit and do a webinar, which excitingly we'll be able to have more guests around the country that actually specialize in affordable housing, because Houston, that's not really our strong suit at the moment. So it'd be great to get some other perspectives from other large urban cities. And then we'll have to worry about paying for travel. We can just get them to Skype in. Also, we'll have more elected officials there because they can just, again, be on video. And also, we're going to work with our professional development department to get CE credit for this. So that'll be a draw to the members. And then our next grant was the Better Block grant, which is normally like the pocket parks, things like that. What we had originally planned for last weekend was to do a big block party in Missouri City, which is a suburban bedroom community right outside of Houston in Fort Bend County. Obviously, that's a horrible idea because it would have about 500 people, food trucks, working very closely. So what we're going to do now is we're researching doing some greenhouses and gardens that can have a small core group of construction workers there to build them out and practice social distancing safely, and also really create a local and sustainable food source for people, because as we all know, during this pandemic crisis, coming by food has been difficult. So we would kind of want to, parks really are kind of passe right now because that's how I have kids. Parks are germ, area for germs. So the garden might be a better option than the greenhouse. That's just two things that we're doing in Houston to try to pivot purposely and quickly to make sure that we still can have that community engagement and reach out to our members.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's, a great example of how we have to kind of think on our feet right now, and the plans that we all had for fundraisers and events and different things. If you want to keep them going, you got to come up with a totally different way to do things. Anybody out there have questions for Amber? I get so distracted by all the videos. I'm like clicking through 9 pages to see people's faces. All right. Well, thank you, Amber.
Yeah, thank y'all for having me.
Keep up the great work, and we will now, from the great state of Indiana, let's talk to Lacey Everett.
Hey, everybody. Great state of Indiana. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So I really appreciated your comments, Amber. I think those are awesome ideas. And I'm just excited about joining you guys and sharing a little bit about what we've taken on as an association. So I'm with a local association in Central Indiana, Mybor Realtor Association. We cover 12 counties and all the municipalities within those counties. And we have a very awesome group of RPAC trustees, and they were already started on their endorsement process for our upcoming election, which was supposed to be in May and is now pushed to June 2nd. So they wanted to make sure to complete that work. And so we decided to hold our first ever virtual RPAC trustee meeting just a couple weeks ago. We interviewed 8 candidates running for local office. We used the Zoom platform. And then we also deliberated and made endorsement decisions after all of the interviews were conducted. So using the Zoom platform, and this, I feel like every day I get more and more proficient with it. I'm sure you guys feel that way too, as you're coming in and out of meetings and using it for different things. But at the time when we were like getting going and trying to navigate how are we going to set this up, it was relatively new to me. And I know it's kind of crazy. Like that was not long ago where I felt very novice to this whole platform. So at the time though, I was speaking with a lot of our colleagues, and I reached out to you guys on the GAD Facebook group and just tried to get some good best practices together and how to handle this. But really, I put a bunch of tips in the Facebook page to kind of help you see, where the pressure points or pain points were for us. But was really important for us to make sure that we, embrace the technology, realize it's not going to be as perfect or semi-perfect as an in-person RPEC trustee meeting. But what we did was, some of the big key points was utilizing the waiting room to make sure that our candidates weren't coming into the meeting prematurely, that we were being really respectful of their time, and it helped keep us on time as well, because we knew, oh, there's somebody waiting. Like us as hosts, we could see their little name and in the box, and we knew that they were there. We also maintained and managed the flow of our meeting through private messaging. You have an ability to send messages to the people in the waiting room. So just once they pop on, you have somebody on your team say, hey, thanks for joining us. We're finishing up with a different interview. We'll be right with you and let you in the room. But really, it's about communication. I mean, I posted several notes, like I said, but my biggest advice is communication. You need to know that all of you as staff and all of your trustees know how the interviews will operate, how you'll interact with the candidates, what else they should expect. Make sure that they are aware of their technology and have tested it, and then make sure your candidates are comfortable. Because we have some rural counties where people just aren't as comfortable with technology, having a video on. We were prepared to let them know, if you're really uncomfortable with the video interview, phone is fine. We'd just be happy to hear from you and have a good conversation. But really, it's the biggest thing is just to prepare and to test. And we had my chair and vice chair and myself were on Zoom the night before, just testing everything, trying to break it almost to make sure that we knew what could happen. And even with the fine, we had a couple of semi big hiccups, but we were able to kind of rebound and get back to it. But I mean, we all know technology is our biggest help. It can be our biggest detriment as well. So we have to operate within that window. I really am. I'm just really extremely proud of my trustees. So I'm going to take a quick minute just to brag on them. But these circumstances have changed our way of life significantly, and COVID-19 has personally touched a lot of people in our association, including the husband of one of our trustees, who was very ill with COVID at the time. Well, luckily, he's making a full recovery, but we know that others have not. And so it's just been really amazing how we've all kind of come together and been able to support each other locally here, but then with all of you guys as well. I mean, we've all become really proficient with video conferencing and virtual events. So this has really opened the door to a lot of opportunity for the future too. And I know you guys realize this already. This isn't going to be the last time we use this platform in the future. And we should be able to wrap our heads around kind of what opportunities does this allow for more engagement, tangible opportunities to really increase our fundraising advocacy efforts. And I'll leave you with this, but right now, one of the biggest examples of the power of the Realtor Party is what we're doing right now. Just being able to communicate and reach out to our membership and let them know and make sure that they're up to speed on what's going on and what their advocates are doing at every level of government. It's something in the messaging that we have the opportunity to really make that connection. It's made possible by their membership to your association, and it's made possible through their RPAC investment. So all of this activity, don't take it for granted. Allow yourself to have that connection and make that connection with your membership, and use this as an opportunity to find better ways to get engaged and to help them get engaged. So I'm eager to hear from everybody else. I really appreciate everyone in GAD Nation and miss you guys, but it's great to see your faces. So thanks, guys.
There are plenty of comments in the chat. I didn't see any questions in there, but lots of comments. I think people have picked up what you've done and really taken a hold of that as something we can replicate. I mean, it is an election year. In whatever format that may be, we still have elections happening. As an aside, just some fun for you guys. I want to see the laughs all around. When the Louisiana legislature was meeting last week to talk about expanding mail-in ballots, they got hung up on a provision that already exists, including faxing ballots. And there was definitely some conversation about someone standing at a fax machine, faxing hundreds of ballots, and how it could totally mess up an election. So there's that. Thank you, Louisiana. All right, that's it for me. Back to Julia.
Oh, awesome. Thank you both. Thank you, Lacey. We read your post in the GAD Facebook group last week, and it was very thorough, and everyone really appreciated it. So everybody keep that kind of communication up. Okay, next up we have Seth Palmer, who is currently holding court on the steps of the North Carolina Capitol to talk about what the North Carolina Association has been doing. Go for it, Seth.
All right. So welcome from the Tar Heel State. The setting of the new Netflix feature, Outer Banks, just not where it was filmed. So when we're thinking about a success story in our current situation in North Carolina, it's most easily broken down into a story of numbers. So I'm gonna roll through a lot of data here. I know we all are super big on math, but I won't do anything above addition or subtraction just for that purpose. So in North Carolina, for NC Realtors, we have over 48,000 members. They span over 46 local associations and cover 100 counties and over 500 municipalities. So when COVID-19 really became an acute issue in North Carolina, that meant that we ended up with over 20 different local stay-at-home orders, some of which with severe restrictions on real estate. And then one statewide order, which coincidentally was just extended no less than, we'll go with 10 minutes ago, which covered all 100 counties but did not assert supremacy over local orders already in place. It did, however, include real estate as an essential service. So with all of that, how did we keep the lights on, keep the membership happy, keep things from not falling into complete anarchy? The one awesome team that is made up by 8 local and regional government affairs directors who work for NC Realtors on behalf of the membership in those local areas and in those regional areas, paired with the 5 local association GADs who are our local staff. And then in addition, our strong lobbying team led by former GAD Advisory Chair Katie Thomas and the whole lot of us who were able to respond quickly and effectively. We were able to get a lot of communication out to the membership very quickly. We launched a new email for us called the Status Update. We did that about a week into where the situation was, and have used that as a platform to push out highly important content to members as needed to give them truly a status update on where things stood. Sometimes that has required a lot of different analysis from folks across the state, and we wouldn't be in the place that we are without the great and strong regional and local GAD team that we've built within the association. Right now, because of all that work, we are left with a plurality of the state considering real estate as an essential service and allowing it to continue in some fashion. There are still some areas, including the largest county, Mecklenburg, which does have pretty severe restrictions that will not be affected with any of the orders that are out right now unless they choose to repeal it at April 30th, as they may. But we've really realized that, as you heard from Lacey, as you heard from others on this call, the impact of communication and really being able to put a lot of information out to members that comes from on the ground intelligence. We all know the value of being in the room where things happen, or at least on the Zoom where things happen. But having folks who are able to pick up the phone and call county commissioners, city councilors, local elected officials in all of the 500 municipalities across the state is so vitally important to us being successful and successful for our members. And as Lacey said, as we try to build a case for the value of advocacy, that can't speak any louder than just having all of that content, all of that information, and all of those relationships. So from North Carolina, we thank everybody for all that you're doing in your states and appreciate the opportunity to tell what we've been doing.
Thank you, Seth. Great job. There is a special circle of hell for a statewide disaster declaration that allows all of the locals to make their own orders. And you guys have done a really admirable job of keeping on top of that tidal wave, as have a number of other of you across the country. So it's just really admirable, all y'all's capacity for taking in that much information, processing it, and making it understandable to your members. Wonderful job. All right, last up on the GAD success story slate for today, we have Spencer from Ohio, which has been a really fascinating state to watch in all of this. So Spencer, tell us about your experiences.
Has been. Thanks for having us. We've got a great team at Ohio Realtors. Myself, Carrie Arblaster, Beth Wanless, Stephen Shockey, who most of you know, in addition to our local GAD network across the state. Everybody's been working overtime to get things done for our members. Firstly, we were able to have real estate deemed as an essential service. There are no kind of county by county problems that we had to deal with, which is didn't really realize was so great until just now. The legislature then convened for an emergency COVID-19 relief bill. Part of this bill was an amendment that we lobbied for to require county offices that are necessary for the transfer of property to remain operational. It's one thing to, have real estate deemed an essential service, but if county recorders, county auditors, county health departments responsible for septic system inspections are not operational, then you may as well not be either. We had passed e-notary a couple of years ago, which has proven to be a pretty helpful thing during all of this. We have backed an executive order that provided some small business relief from commercial evictions and foreclosures. It's a 90-day executive order, and really have been working in lockstep with the DeWine administration. We were named to his economic strike force. He's created kind of a number of economic task forces, this one being a kind of a group of CEOs and trade organizations to talk about ways that we can mitigate the economic fallout from all of this. One of the requests of the economic strike force was for as much data as we could possibly get to the administration and the legislature to help them as they're going about their policymaking. And in addition to MLS data, one of the things that we wanted to do was kind of an economic pulse poll similar to what NAR has done. So if I can share here, I will show you all what we've come up with. So we're doing these weekly. We largely copied a lot of the questions from NAR. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. Dr. Yoon is a very smart guy, much smarter than any of us at Ohio Realtors. So we opted to go with his line of questioning. We divided it out into a commercial and residential poll. And like I said, a lot of this data has been really helpful in the administration's policymaking. You'll see we have kind of week over week comparisons as we've been doing this for a couple of weeks. And one of the kind of more pertinent questions to our association right now, which I'm sure is a question that a lot of folks are handling, is when will this 1099 pandemic unemployment assistance be up and running at the state level? For Ohio, it's something that our state is still working at getting operational. But through some of our data gathering, we can show that a large chunk of our membership on the commercial and residential sides will look to apply for some of this assistance once it's all up and running. So that kind of runs through the commercial side. And then of course we have the residential side here too. One interesting note is that, in week one of this, there was a kind of almost a little bit of a freak out understandably so, with some of our members saying that this was going to significantly decrease buyer interest. That's ticked downward in a more positive direction over the past couple of weeks, which is nice to see. But again, just good data that we can share with the administration, and our whole team has worked really hard to get this up and running. We have we've had about 1,000 responses plus each time to this, which is a great sample size for us. So yeah, hopefully we'll keep this going as long as the governor asks for it, and that'll keep us in his good graces.
Thank you, Spencer. That is really, really awesome. That's an impressive survey.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to share with anyone kind of how we put it on, what we do to promote it across all our platforms, and you know, the technology tool that we use to make all this happen. If anyone wants to talk offline, I'm happy to break it down for you.
All right, thank you. Anybody have any questions for our GADs who have shared with us today? Anybody else have shout outs you want to let us know what's going on? Give us some good news. Anything exciting? I refinanced and I'm saving a lot of money. There's some good news for you. Now's the time, right?
Are you able to do a virtual closing?
We're not closing yet, hopefully within the next few days. It's been the longest process ever, but at the end of the day, it's going to be really good. All right. Thank you guys so much. Julia.
Thanks, y'all. You guys are killing it. I think that we are sitting here today nearing the end of April, and from what I'm reading around the country, the next big thing we're all going to be talking about, and I know some of you already are, is how we engage with our governments in plans to reopen our communities, reopen our economies. And so I've seen some of you post looking for some ideas on that already in the Facebook group, but I imagine that that's going to be the next big thing. And so definitely keep sharing your ideas, keep helping each other out. It's immensely valuable. I will say, for me personally, there's no way we would have been as successful as we've been without the feedback that I've gotten from a whole bunch of y'all. So that's how we keep making this work. Teamwork makes the dream work, right? Yay. All right. That is the main portion of our program here today. NAR, Chrissy, anything else we missed? Any updates you want to give the community?
I don't think we have any more updates immediately. I have been hearing some feedback that there may be some timing issues with the scheduling for the GAD mid-year meetings with the California State Association's meetings. So I want to reassure everyone, we will be providing recordings of all of this mid-year meeting sessions that we're holding. And they will be accessible if you cannot attend at the time when they are live. Other than that, you know, Julia and the team on the advisory group and my group with NAR are continuing to work closely together on developing everything for GAD Institute, and we will keep everybody posted with the dates for what those meetings will look like and when. And I think for now, that is it from us.
Okay, y'all, next week, professional development, 3 to 5 p.m. Central. You do the math for your own time zones. I am a words person, not a math person. We look forward to seeing you then. Keep in touch. If you need anything in the meantime, you know where we are. Keep rocking it. Take care of yourselves. Bye, y'all.
Everyone.